Good morning and welcome to Wealth Strategies Unleashed. I'm Mike Alexander with Concenture Wealth Management, and I have with me today
Robert Gilliland here in Houston, ready to roll. Hey, Mike.
Hey, good to see you, Robert, and thanks for letting me play guest host this morning. I know you usually have to do most of the heavy lifting, but today we actually have the opportunity to talk about something that I know you're a real expert in, and that really comes down to kind of tax planning. And so as we sit here in the early part of 2024, what should investors be thinking about as it relates to tax strategies this year? I realize that April is just right around the corner.
Yeah, I don't think that it does us any good, and there's not much value in us talking about what do you need to do for taxes that happen and tax costs that happened last year, right? Let's talk about some of the things that you can do as you're looking forward and paying attention. One thing that we do with all of our clients is that I do think this year, especially how the first part of the year has kind of started off, there's probably going to be some adjustments in allocations. I think that it makes sense to put a reminder on your calendar to have a conversation around tax strategies when it comes to realizing gains, offsetting them, and managing the portfolios tax aware. Now, what do I mean by that? So I've got a portfolio, then I've got a manager who's managing it, and they've realized long-term capital gains because they've had some things that have done really, really well, and it's time to realize those gains, right? Well, about mid-year, it probably makes sense to go in and review the portfolio and see if there are some losses that you can take, not upset the balance of the portfolio. And I know that kind of is, hey, look, I don't want to have any losses, but offset some losses so that you can offset those gains that'll be realized. Now, when you go to offset those gains, so like as an example, let's use a hypothetical company, Mike Co., right? So Mike Co. Has done really, really well, and I've made 100% on my money. And something changed, or the markets or the economy changed, and it made sense to get out of Mike Co. But we have XYZ company over here that we still believe in, and we like that company. But because the industry, economic conditions, or whatever are down, we can sell XYZ company, realize that loss, and it offsets my gain in Mike Co. Now, as long as I wait 31 days to go and buy XYZ back, no problem. If I turn around and buy it back the next day, I've completely eliminated my wash sale. I've invoked the wash sale, which means that I don't get the advantage of the tax loss. But if I wait 31 days, then I can go and buy XYZ back. I hope that makes sense. But it absolutely makes sense to start managing your taxable assets through a lens of minimizing the tax burden that you're going to have after we've had big gains, and kind of start that mid-year so you're not forced to make rash decisions at the end of the year. So we start that with our clients and go and do that. There were a couple other changes that I think are significant that we have that you need to be aware of. Obviously, the age for required minimum distributions out of your IRA account. It used to be that if you were 70 and a half. Now you're seven. Now it'll be 73. So in other words, if you're born between 1951 and 1959, 73 is your required minimum distribution age.
And that just started this year, right? Right, Robert?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so that's moved up inside of there, but it makes sense just to be aware. But the real thing is that if you're born after 1960, you're not going to be subject to required minimum distributions until you are 75 years old. Excuse me. Something else that I think is they increase the ranges to be able to deduct IRA contributions and raise the raise the limits. They raised it if you're under 50 to $7,000, and if you're over 50 to $8,000. That makes a big difference. So making contributions excuse me, I, a lot of times we talk to people who may not be eligible for a tax deduction in making an IRA contribution. Even if you don't get a tax deduction, it still makes sense to make a contribution inside of there.
And that's obviously because of the tax deferred growth of the underlying assets, correct?
That's right. Now, really, I think the final and biggest point that I have about tax planning and 2024 is I think that it makes there's no question that it is vitally important for 2024 and as we look forward into 2025 to be reviewing Roth conversions, converting a portion of your IRA into a Roth. Now, a lot of people don't want to pay that tax, but the Trump tax laws all expire in 2026. We clearly have a government spending problem. We have 2024 and 2025 that you have this ability, without regard to your income, to convert your IRA over into a Roth. And it makes a ton of sense. Just kind of as a basic level on Roths, when you make a contribute with Roth IRA balances, after as long as the money's been in there for 5 years, or the Roth's been in existence for 5 years, when you take the distribution out of the Roth, there are no taxes. It's tax-free to you. So that means all of those gains you don't pay any tax on. Now, that is a taxable event. Converting your traditional IRA over to a Roth is a taxable event. And that's where you have to go and look at, okay, I'm going to pay a little bit more in taxes in 24 and 25. Tax rates are at historic lows. They are going up in 2026 as it stands right now, right? Because Trump tax cuts are going to expire. This is an opportunity here for you to think about the future. Number one is that when you turn 75 or your required minimum distributions begin, our Roth IRAs are not subject to RMDs. So now it gives you flexibility inside of there. It also gives your beneficiaries flexibility when they inherit. There are a tremendous number of reasons why for the next 2 years, looking at Roth conversions makes a ton of sense. People need to evaluate whether or not it makes sense for them, make the call whether or not they're willing to go to pay the taxes. There are some strategies for getting the taxes paid. Some of them mean that you'll have more money later. If you pay the taxes out of, call it cash flow or savings or taxable accounts, but you can always pay the taxes out of the IRA. And so we have a lot of conversations with people about taking and doing a conversion. Right now, we've done a tremendous number of those, and every person that we talk to, we bring it to their attention. And what's amazing is that they go and they say, hey, yeah, I don't know that this necessarily makes sense for me. When we show them the numbers and we show them what happens, and we show them that at age 78, their assets, their net worth is actually going to be higher, and they're going to have pay less in taxes. What? Okay. Let's go.
Hey, Robert, you don't have to get into the weeds on this, but how do you think about that kind of calculation? Obviously, do people do, their whole IRA? Do they do a part of it? How do you think about that? And again, not to get too deep into it, but just, more philosophically.
Well, I'm glad you said don't get deep into it, because there's a lot more magic than science behind it per se. A lot of it has to do with people's tolerance of what they're willing to go to do, right? It makes people's stomach hurt to write a check or to know that they're paying taxes of $250,000, right? That the idea of that amount of money going to the government bothers people. But you're not required to do all of it. You're not required to do half. So what we do with people is we kind of think about a tax budget. How much are you comfortable with? And then we kind of play with the numbers to see where do we end up at the end of the day with the most amount of money, and what's our break-even point? Because clearly paying taxes is going to take money away from the pot, right? How long does it take for us to get back to even? Is that an acceptable time frame? Do we have longevity? And then we look at how much money's left over. right? At call it age 94 or something like that. And then go through, to me, if we think about this, the average American has the majority of their money tied up in two places. One of them is their house, and the other place is their retirement accounts, right? And a lot of our clients want to leave something to their kids. Well, the beautiful thing about a Roth is you're leaving tax-free money to the kids. If it's inside of an IRA, they're going to have to empty that IRA over 10 years. Same is true with a Roth, but they're going to pay taxes on that while that money's coming out. Inside of the Roth, they're not going to pay any taxes. And so it's really an extra gift if there's going to be money left over and you go through and you run a plan and you've got a 95% probability of success of reaching all your goals and there's money left over, it might make sense. The other reason why you might consider it is that if your required minimum distributions from your qualified accounts is more than what you need to live on, which we see that all the time. But what that means is that I'm 75 years old and I have to take more money out of my IRA, which means I have to pay more taxes than what I need to live on. So, and when you stop and think about the fact that it's obvious that tax rates have to go up, it makes perfect sense to evaluate the Roth that's in there. So we can reduce the RMDs, your required minimum distributions, a little bit of science, a little bit of magic, make it so you have flexibility for tax-free income in retirement, distributions from the Roth, help out your beneficiaries, and you just have to. I'm kind of being a little bit long-winded. The thing about it is that there's not a formula you go through to type through to see how much. It really depends on what people are comfortable with, and then we work the numbers to figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah, it seems like also it would make sense even for some younger folks that are still working but have like an IRA rollover from somewhere else, and maybe they're not converting the whole thing, but maybe they convert a little bit, this year, a little bit next year, and kind of gradually do that while they're working, just so that they have that tax-free benefit at the at full retirement, right?
Oh, it makes a tremendous amount of sense to go through to do that. I just really think that is the way that younger people who have, or anyone who has an IRA account that was a former employer's 401k that they did the rollover, we've got a 2-year window. We have to act.
Right. So we got a few minutes left, but is there anything out there that maybe people typically don't think about that maybe is an opportunity as it relates to tax? Obviously, we have lots of our clients that have children in college. They've got 529 plans out there. Is there anything out there that maybe we haven't thought of or we haven't dug into?
Yeah, you know what? I think I'll hit on two of them. Number one is that Secure Act 2.0 did something that was really great, is that if you have a 529 plan that's overfunded, your Johnny was really, really smart and got scholarships and didn't need all that money to graduate. What do you do with that extra money? Well, you can move it over to another beneficiary or another child, or you can take it out yourself, or you leave it to a grandchild. That used to be our choices. Now, what you have the ability to do is take up to the Roth contribution limit out and put that into a Roth IRA for that child. So Johnny got a full ride scholarship. He did absolutely great, graduated. He's now on his own, and you have money left over in the Roth. And he was your last child to go through school. What do you do? Well, you can take up to the limit. And by the way, the lifetime max right now is $35,000, and put that into a Roth IRA for him. It is non-taxable. And now what you're doing is you're setting Johnny up for the future. And so we see clients are very interested in that. There are some caveats on there. The 529 has to be in existence for at least 10 years, and any contribution over the last 5 are not eligible for it. And you're limited to 35,000. there has to be earned income in order to be able to do this. So fingers crossed, not only did Johnny graduate, but Johnny got a job. And so it is a good thing. It's a great way to set them up so that they have this for their future. And to me, it makes a tremendous amount of sense to be aware of that. There's one other thing I want to talk about, because we actually have a lot of clients who are subject to required minimum distributions. They don't need that required minimum distribution. They really don't want to pay the taxes. Well, they can give what's called a qualified charitable donation directly from their IRA, and that's a non-taxable event to them. So that number used to be $100,000 in 2024. That number went up. It's now 105. So if you're charitably inclined and you don't need that required minimum distribution, and it's something that you want to go to do, you can do a sum or a portion. It's not an all or none. You can do $50,000. You can do $10,000 and not have to pay tax on that money. The thought used to be is that I would take my distribution, then I would write my check to charity XYZ while I paid tax on it. So now that's shrunk, and then I don't get the full deduction. Now with the qualified charitable donation, then you do that. So those are really two things that we really didn't talk about that I think people need to kind of pay attention to.
Wow, that's a lot. And Robert, it doesn't seem like a lot of those were really heavily publicized. So thanks for bringing it to our attention today. You've given us a lot to chew on.
Talk about it, right?
You're 100% right. Well, really do appreciate it, and want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Wealth Strategies Unleashed. Thanks. Have a good day.
See you later.